Welcome to Learning in Action. It's the story of ISB each month, how learning takes place and what the experience is like. My name's Ewan McIntosh, a friend of the International School of Brussels here in Edinburgh. And yes, stuck in Edinburgh, while the three young people I want to learn from are in Brussels. The past 8 months have been a rare experience. It's one that every teenager on the planet has shared in more or less the same way to some degree. And yet the voices we hear every day are those of politicians, of heads of school, and of course the endless stream of experts who found their voice on social media. It's hard to find the laser-sharp signal that marks out the voices of young people amongst all that noise of the scientists, politicos and journalists until now. I'm joined by 3 students from the International School of Brussels who thinks it's high time that we understand what's going on from their perspective. I'm joined by Emer, Amit and Hannah from the school, and the very first thing I want to find out is what have we actually learned since March beyond the online learning that we've had to learn, and what does it mean for us? Amit, I'm going to start with you. I mean, you have, I presume you've been in Brussels this whole time, but what's that been like? What's that experience done for you, and what have you learned?
I think, but as it just got worse and we had to stay inside, it became very difficult. I think everything just was so new, and I wasn't used to anything that was happening, and we never knew what was going to happen next, I guess, and just that unknown was very confusing and challenging.
What was it? Tell me, first of all, what was it like the last time, if you can remember, the last time you had a normal class back in March?
Oh, wow, I don't even remember. I think don't expect anything to happen. It was so dramatic. They told us after school was over that we had to stay inside. They didn't say it during school, so we just thought it was another normal day at school. We didn't say goodbye to our friends or anything.
Wow. And so, I mean, when you not having that opportunity just even to, I was going to say give a hug and say goodbye, but of course no one's given a hug to anyone in quite a long time. Emer, you're with all your friends, all your pals at school, then you find yourself in an apartment or in your house, in your home. Can you remember after that initial period of maybe watching Netflix and enjoying a little bit of respite, what have you learned about yourself from this period of work, of learning online mostly until summer?
Well, honestly, personally, it was a mixed and a roller coaster of emotions throughout the whole thing, because it wasn't all bad. Of course, it was a tragic event, and it's crazy that we're a part of a pandemic, and it sucks to be inside constantly. But there are things that I learned about myself that I don't think I could have developed in the same way if I didn't have the chance to be constantly all alone, enclosed in my own home. Because honestly, if we're serious and we're honest, every day we're constantly doing something. We're active, our brains are constantly occupied through our phones, through school, through our extracurricular activities. And
but when you're stuck at home, you know, I felt this, that the phone, the thing that was useful before, has become my number one distractor, and is, you know, how did you manage that? Did you have to establish new routines, or?
Yeah, for sure. I think it was an opportunity for me to focus on stuff that I couldn't really focus on during school. Because distance learning, of course, it was school focused and we had classes, but we had a lot more free time, so I could focus on like going to the gym. I could go to the gym in my own room. I could focus on making music, which is what I like doing. So I think it was a way to also be productive, even though there was times where I just felt like, I want to go outside and see my friends, and I was just stuck on my phone scrolling through social media.
What's your biggest achievement then with having that time?
I think it was my routine of being able to work out almost every single day and balance school and progress a ton in music and producing and stuff like that.
I often wonder whether, as young people or adults, actually we have more in common than we have apart at the moment. Because of course that's the thing. I've been enjoying my 5 kilometers a day every day, and for me, I'm a drummer. It's off camera, but you know, being able to indulge a little bit of time. I had a guilty conscience though sometimes when I wasn't doing the serious work that I was meant to be doing, but enjoying those activities. And Hannah, if I come to you, Hannah, and we think about kind of the seriousness of schoolwork, you're hitting what might be considered the serious years of school, but you've got all this swimming around. What is the impact of that quite a significant shock earlier this year? What's the impact today? What do you notice yourself feeling today that maybe gets in the way of you feeling you can do your best?
I did find that, especially through distance learning, it was extremely hard to focus during actual classes. But as Amar and me rightly said, we had so much free time and time to just for ourselves to do activities we liked. And for me personally, it was especially discovering subjects in school and going further into those subjects and learning about those subjects outside of the classroom and reading books. And it was very enriching actually to have all that time to be able to go deeper into those classes that I sometimes wish we went further into.
Now you're in school now. That's where you're sat, and I'm wondering whether those silver linings that you and Amar have talked about, being able to dive deep into things you enjoy, but maybe also being able to dive deep into things you just don't understand very well and get good at it. You're back in school. Have you noticed that you have got those opportunities still, or do you think that school is trying to race back to normal, whatever normal was?
I'm finding myself a lot more stressed, and I do see that time has diminished tremendously. I've wanted to get back to reading those books, and what I've done all summer practically and during the lockdown. And I've actually been sad about it because it's something I really enjoy doing, and now when I get home, I lose time already just getting home, which wasn't an issue before. And then I find myself having to do homework and assignments, and there's just a lot more stuff to do because we're back in school, and so a lot less time to focus on other things.
I definitely agree with what you said there, because I've noticed a huge difference in not only my productivity, but what I've been able to achieve and learn.
Do you mean your productivity is better in school than it was, or the other way around?
Outside of school, like working on myself and working on extracurriculars, for example. I've noticed that I haven't had the chance to work as I did during quarantine, and I'm grateful that I got that chance, because I feel like maybe if school continued as normal, maybe I didn't discover some things that I did during that time.
It almost seems like it does almost sound like you've had a taste of university life, or a taste of working life, where you can be good at the academic side, but actually you're much more in control of your calendar and your timetable, and you reap the benefit of that. And Amit, what about you?
Yeah, I think that I don't know if I was very productive during quarantine, but to me it kind of feels like when we started quarantine, we kind of moved into some kind of new time zone, and everything was just a lot more relaxed, and I wasn't very motivated, but I discovered many new hobbies and new things that I wanted to try, and everything was just so much slower, and I just had so much time, and I could sleep more and still be able to do more. Like 24 hours felt much longer, and now it's kind of like we're moved back to our normal time zone. We're like jet lagged and trying to figure out and we're just so, like, our brains are still in a way still stuck in quarantine, but we are here in like this new time zone, and everybody's just, the school, it kind of feels like we jumped back and skipped those 6 months that we were out, and to me, I feel like my brain is still kind of lost in that relaxed time zone, and there's just so much work, and I think I'm getting a little overwhelmed because of that. And and I'm trying to be as productive or as using my time as well as I used to.
And what are you as students? A lot of the time when we're in a school building, we think everything is because of what the adults do, what the grown-ups do. But actually, as a student body, you can also do so much. You can shape your learning. You can give ideas. If you were to propose an idea, a silver lining of this last 6 months that you really do wish as a school community we could do more of, what would it be if it were just one particular thing?
I maybe, I don't know how much this is a silver lining, but I think being on my own, and I think when we're at school, there's the time schedule and everything. We just know what's going to happen next, and everything is just so clear, and we don't really think about, I guess, too much managing our time, or I guess exploring things that are just on our mind, because everything is just so fixed and set. And I think when I had so much time during quarantine, or maybe I was I don't know, procrastinating or something like that, I used, I think, my brain or my imagination, or I did things that I wanted to do, and I felt more freedom, I think, and that was maybe a silver lining. And I was able to, I guess, express more of like my creativity. And I think if I had a project during quarantine that I had to, like in theater, we had a project that was very creative, and I think it was very helpful that it was actually during quarantine, because I was able to use my time and really work hard at expressing myself. Where here, when the time schedule is set, I think your mind is more like focused on the timetable, and not, you don't have as much freedom, I guess.
Yeah,
It's almost like you're saying your mind's focused on the next thing, not where you are now.
Exactly.
for sure. Yeah, I think very often in class you think, I can't wait for this class to be over and go to the next class. But I think that the challenge of having to make your own timetable and manage your own time helped all of us as people to really focus and be able to be the most productive form of ourselves. Because we're always told what to do and where to go, but when you have those 12 hours in a day to use for anything you can, it really challenges us to do the best that we can.
And I see you guys sat opposite me now, and to be honest, you look pretty much the same as the undergraduate students who arrived in Edinburgh a few weeks ago. You're not far off that journey yourself, where what you're describing, Emer, is exactly what they have to do as well. A really challenging question at the moment for a lot of universities is how to offer an experience that feels like a university experience. Schools and the International School of Brussels is one of the foremost really asking that question of what on earth are we for, and what should that experience feel like. How have your expectations changed about the years ahead, particularly if you were thinking of going to university? Are you still thinking of going to university? Are there things you definitely want to do now that you weren't so sure of before? Are there other things in life you're thinking of putting off for a while? What's running through your mind about the future?
For me personally, there was never a question about not going to university because of the pandemic. That's always been my number one goal, and that's never going to change. But my expectations for myself have actually changed as well. I want to also spend more time on myself, and as both Ewan and me also said, is that quarantine helped us find ourselves in a way that we maybe wouldn't have had the chance to if we weren't in lockdown. So there's definitely that idea of taking time for myself even at university. And you mentioned earlier that quarantine life was sort of like an introduction to university, and I really like that because that's exactly how I felt during the quarantine and the lockdown, is that I had to manage my time, I had to make food for myself because both my parents were also working during their own meetings, and so it was really that independent lifestyle that I'm looking forward to in university actually.
I'll add to that I don't think there's anything that we can predict at this point, because we're in such a surreal situation that none of us in this generation have experienced. So it's hard to say what's going to come next. I think it's just be open to the new experiences that are going to happen and try to integrate into that new form of society that might happen in the future, in the near future, in the next years.
There was a word you used, integrating, that you're integrating these experiences. And in the world of business, they talk about integrative thinking. So you're not looking at things as being good or bad, pros or cons, but actually everything's a pro. And all you're having to do is work out what's the best available option to me right now, and not worry too much about the step after that and the step after that. And it seems that, as young people, maybe you're more robust than some of the adults who are seeing their careers change, who are seeing the uncertainty of future maybe affect what they thought they were going to do. And yourself, your expectations changed, or are you going to go about things pretty much as you thought you always would do?
I think my plans didn't really change, but I think I learned to appreciate giving myself alone time, and I really value it a lot more. Time to reflect and time to, I think before we were in quarantine, it was kind of like a race, and like you said, we were always kind of waiting for the next thing, and I think I learned to really value living in the present and maybe being on my own and figuring out how to play it. So, yeah.
I'm really interested as well, as we move towards the end of this chat. This year there were no examinations for the International Baccalaureate. I live in Scotland, and our Deputy First Minister has just announced that lots of exams will be postponed and delayed to create more space. Some are going to be postponed, cancelled altogether. So that's looking like on the cards. There may be more disruption to the thing that a lot of young people like you really think is the goal, the target. If there are no examinations next year, if you're leaving school without those exams, how does that change maybe your expectations of what's important in the way that you learn? You're saying your plans haven't really changed, but perhaps the thing you're working towards, the target moves completely or just isn't there. And how does that make you feel? And you must have had friends who've just gone through that experience themselves.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to be hopeful and hoping it doesn't get canceled, but as we learned, anything could happen, and we thought when we went into quarantine it was going to be 2 weeks, and it ended up being 6 months. So, you never know what's going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to prepare. I'm just trying to be hopeful.
I just say I'll try to prepare as best as I can for everything that I'm working on right now and the things that I'm trying to achieve. And if the examinations don't happen, then hopefully I'll have prepared enough to be ready for something. And of course, the unknown is always scary, but that's what makes us stronger and develops us as learners.
I think, the scariest part about this whole pandemic and the lockdown and everything is not knowing what's coming next. It's this uncertainty of what's this going to look like in a month, in a year. And I think that's the scariest thing also as a student, whether it's in school or university-wise or just globally and socially. There's so many unknowns that it's pretty scary.
International schools have a reputation that they put out on their websites and their marketing materials that often talks of guaranteeing success and guaranteeing things for young people in the future. And you're saying that really there's very little can be guaranteed these days, but I think what it does show, what your words and your stories do show, is that you've got this flexibility and you've got a certain resilience to que sera sera, and in the meantime it's one day at a time. And probably the most promising message that I think is coming from what you're saying is that it's not a bad thing to have a little bit more time to yourself and to have the clock switched off for a little while. It allows you to take time to do the right thing, which may not be the best thing in the eyes of those around you. People who want you to do well, but sometimes taking that time to be well and concentrating on your passions is what matters most to you. You also remind me so much of the artist Stefan Sagmeister. He's a man who takes a retirement every 7 years. He figures, why bother saving up all that time until you're close to death? Why not take the time every 7 years while you're still young enough to enjoy it? Take that year off work and slow the clock down. And what you've had, I think, is almost like a mini retirement well before your time. And you've enjoyed it in the same way as your grandparents, I'm sure, have done as well. Thank you so much for your contributions. I think that your school's in safe hands if students like you have some voice in shaping what comes next. I hope that someone is listening